Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Rohit Garg, the co-founder and CEO of SmartCoin, the instant loan platform. Uh, Rohit is a graduate of IIT Kanpur and I am Ahmedabad. He has also worked for companies such as Morgan Stanley, Deutsche Bank, Citibank, and Nomura before starting his own venture, SmartCoin, in 2016. Hi, Rohit. Welcome to ELI.
Yeah. Hi, Priya. How are you?
I'm good, Rohit. How about you?
I'm good. Thank you.
I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me first. I think great pleasure to be here and talking to your viewers and subscribers. Uh, so, to give a background on myself, I've I've been born and brought up in a city named Kota in Rajasthan, which is now quite
Yeah.
famous or infamous for Kota factory. But yeah, so obviously one of the I would say side effects of being grown up in Kota was that naturally I think that became a also sort of a easier route for folks like us, and I also realized I think that's like maths and science, and these were the subjects which I was heavily interested in. So naturally ended up preparing for IIT, and then I qualified to do a bachelor's in computer science from IIT Kanpur.
Mhm.
So I spent about like 4 years, got my BTech there. 2006 I graduated, and then I wanted to spend a couple of years in the industry because I was also starting to have a much deeper interest in finance and economics at that point.
Okay.
But I want to take my time and understand, whether I want to be in computer science or work at the intersection of computer science and finance. So that's when I ended up joining Morgan Stanley in Mumbai. Thereafter, also worked with Deutsche, and then I went back to school, did my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Upon graduation, I directly moved to London. From there, where I joined Nomura in their global markets function. So I was looking at European and US global financial markets. Spent about 5.5 years there. In fact, I was 3 months shy of getting my British citizenship when I decided to come back to India and start SmartCoin. Like I always wanted to come back and do my own business, but I think multiple things happened along the way, which just I think cemented that further. So one, I think like growing up in relatively smaller cities, there was always an inclination to do something which could impact the mass market, or something which goes beyond the top tier of India and really impacts the sizable missing middle classes, or the next billion users, as it's called now. Uh, and at the same time, I think when I was working outside India, I think that the gaps in I think the Indian financial services ecosystem became even more glaring. So it's very clear that I think there is a need to really approach the problem in a different way and revolutionize it. And that there's a huge gap, and I think a real problem that needs to be solved. And I think sort of the final trigger for that was that I think in one of my back home trips to India, like I took a sabbatical in between to understand and I think really figure how do I approach this. This is when I also I think started discussing a lot more with three more friends of mine who are now my co-founders on this journey, Amit, Vinay, and Jayant. Uh, all three of them are also graduates from different IITs around the same batches, so we have been friends from long. But they had been working in areas of technology, consumer products, machine learning, data science. Uh, and I think when we actually gathered, we were very clear that I think to solve this problem in a deep, meaningful manner, we need to leverage technology, because otherwise you will end up doing a lot of incremental innovations. Uh, I think which is good, but that does not really, I think, become a game changer, or change the space as it's exactly needed. So that's when I think we started doing a lot of I think meetings with your small shopkeepers, the grocery owners, folks like your gig workers, delivery boys, drivers, I think security guards, pretty much every person we could talk to, we tried to understand in deep, like we knew the problem, but what's the best way to approach a solution. For that we tried to gather more and more insights, and I think that's when we realized, I think even further, the depth of the problem was far bigger than what we imagined. And then obviously worked along the way to find the solution. But like I remember one particular conversation. I think I was driving in an auto rickshaw in Mumbai around then. When we're talking to a lot of these guys, and I think upon further conversation with him, I think I realized that a lot of these guys, even to start their day, they need money to get fuel in their, I think vehicles, and they don't always have a lot of savings. It so happens that even to get 1,000 rupee petrol in their, auto, they have to borrow at as high as 10% a day. So they borrow from a local lender at 10% a day. At the end of the day, this guy will pay him 1,100 bucks and pocket 300, 400 bucks for himself, right? And this is how he saves money for his parents back home as well as his family sustenance. But like you realize how inefficient the system is, right? And there were a lot of obviously local practices which these local guys practice in terms of collection and sort of collateral and all, which are obviously not very friendly. So we realized, I think, we are sitting at a cusp of revolution with everything that is happening in the ecosystem, and that led us to, build SmartCoin the way it is right now.
Okay. Now, SmartCoin is already very popular in its target segment, the segment we are targeting. But there are some people who are not pretty familiar with the segment itself, who are listening to us. So, would you care to explain what is SmartCoin about?
Sure. So, as I was saying, like we started SmartCoin with the idea of enabling financial services which are personalized, which are affordable, and which are instant for the missing middle of India. And when I say this missing middle or the next billion segment, we are talking of people who are either working as self-employed micro entrepreneurs. So every small shopkeeper, who is running his business nearby. Shopkeepers as well as self-employed folks. You come across, say, beauticians, electricians, plumbers, all these guys who are basically running one-man businesses, right? Or typically smaller teams. So for them, because it is not an established setup, it's very difficult for them to be recognized and serviced by the large institutions. In fact, the fact that India is home to the largest semi-organized and unorganized sector in the world, that just makes the scale of the problem much more bigger. And we are also talking of the gig economy, which houses folks who are working as delivery boys, drivers, your truck drivers, beauticians, any profile that you typically see in the lower to middle income range, right? Your security guards, and then people who are working in like plethora of job profiles. I think we have more than 1,000 sort of work profiles that are being serviced on our platform, right? So when you put these guys together, there are some common themes to it, right? One, I think most of these guys fall in the relatively middle to lower income segment. So majority of our customers earn less than 40,000-50,000 rupees a month. In fact, on top of it, a lot of their cash flows are highly volatile in nature because there is business seasonality. There is a lot of other sort of volatility which they have to incur. At the same time, majority of these folks come from relatively smaller cities in India, like tier 2 and below. And what has happened, obviously, over time, that in urban areas, still, I think that the service levels have really improved for traditional banking sector as well. But if you look at tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 areas, because the branch structures are obviously not as evolved, given the economics that they have to follow. So that just makes it far more difficult to service everyone with the same quality. And that really shows up, right? On top of it, if you look at their bureau scores, they are obviously not totally evolved. Most of these guys are thin file, no file. So given all of these problems, majority of these institutions are, majority of these customers are not serviced by your traditional banks and NBFCs. In fact, when we were starting out, it was quite a staggering revelation to us that, for all the growth that Indian banking sector has seen in the last 2 decades. Uh, Less than 50 million people in India, like less than 5% of people in India still have access to unsecured credit. So basically, everyone beyond the top 5% still struggling to get easy access to credit. On top of it, because I think most of these guys work to enable credit for the large or the affluent segments, the typically large income segment. So the products are also not created in a way which caters to the specific needs of these segments. Like one of the things that we realize when it comes to financial services, in fact, if you leave financial services, one thing that you might remember with the FMCG companies as well, they initially created products for the urban segment.
Right.
And when they wanted to serve the smaller, village population or the low income population, they realized that they had to create sachet product. That's how sachets come into the being, right? So now you get shampoo sachet and like oil sachets and all. And I think that's exactly the similar phenomenon which the telecom industry started to do, right? The recharges were again done, a chota recharge or small packets there. And in the same way, when you look at financial services, that also becomes very different for these guys, right? Typically, their needs are very different from, the relatively large income segment. So when they need credit, even a medical emergency for say 5,000 rupees or a working capital purchase they have to do for 10,000, 15,000 rupees, that's a big need for them. And the way that needs to be catered to that becomes very, very different, because typically if you have a medical emergency at home or if you have to pay someone, that is something where you can't wait for 7 days or 10 days. You need that soon, right? You need that with minimal paperwork. In fact, most of the banks do not even provide credit below, couple of lakhs. So for such needs, they anyway cannot go to the large institution. So we realized you need to also innovate and personalize the product. Same way, like if you want to give them an insurance product, they do not have 5,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees to pay for an insurance premium. They have to again get a relatively different product. So pretty much same across all the product in financial services, and that hasn't really happened yet. So, I mean, that's what SmartCoin has been doing. We actually have innovated on two major areas, I would say. Number one, we sort of engineered the entire product life cycle to make it 100% digital and automated. So what happened because of that? One, we were able to make micro products sustainable. The issue, obviously, why most large institutions don't give micro product is that because of their heavy OPEX and branch structure, it becomes very difficult for them to make it sustainable, right? But with our technology, because we are able to make those costs actually pretty low, so for us, actually, that becomes a sustainable product, and then that becomes a win-win for both us and the customer, right? Number two, the biggest reason why these segments were not served was because historically India has been quite data poor. And in absence of data, it's very difficult to determine, how do you understand someone's profile to create the right product for them. However, I think in the last 4-5 years, and now I think even more so with the digital data accelerating and the adoption rising, going through the roof, we figured that if you have to disrupt this segment, you have to use technology and data science. Like you have to have a data first, mobile first approach. That's the only way you can solve for it. So because we sort of created that, from the scratch, we were able to leverage, I think, tons of data that is, I think flowing through the systems right now to actually solve this problem. And that is something which really differentiates us from, all the large institutions, and even I think a lot of new age institutions over there. So yeah, so I think that's what SmartCoin does. And I'm very happy to say, right, I think we have seen a lot of traction with our customer base, and we have been able to serve over 7 million users, over 70 lakh users across the length and breadth of India. We have served so far. In fact, we have served them in more than 18,000 pin codes in 98% districts of India. So someone who is a grocery shopkeeper in Arunachal Pradesh, or a CRPF guy in Jammu Kashmir, or even a hotel owner in Andaman and Nicobar, in a place which is 150 kilometers from Port Blair, they have been our customers, and we're really happy to see the way I think India in general has evolved, and we have been a part of that.
That is really a massive scale of operation you are doing. You spoke about data analytics and data science. I'd like to understand a few things from that angle. First of all, how do you determine whether a customer is credit worthy or not. And when I ask that, I also understand most of majority of the user base don't have a credit history at all. So any data models around that, and any other data models that you deploy to cater to this particular user category?
Right. So, see, one of the key issues that happens when you underwrite this segment, like before that, if we take a step back and understand how typically do people and look at credit assessment. So they look at two, three things when they try to assess your credit profile for any product. Number one is institutions try to ascertain for fraud possibilities, or like, are you a genuine person or not? How do they do it? The way they do it right now is they'll come to your home, or they'll give to your office. They will do reference checks with your HR or with your, I think, neighbors. They will collect tons of data around who are you, where do you live, what is your phone number, how is your family like, how much do you earn, all those sort of things, right? Number two, they try to figure out how much do you earn or how much do you make, to again understand the right product that should be pushed to you. How is it done right now? People will ask you for your pay slips, your income documents, and sort of other documentation which is around that. And the last thing is, when they're trying to judge whether or not you will repay the loan, the only way they do it right now is by looking at your bureau scores, right? The CIBIL scores. And like, have you displayed significant positive behavior in terms of loan repayments in the past? Now, there are a few problems with each of these approaches, right? Especially when you're looking at microcredit. The number one, when you are trying to go at each individual's home or office and collect tons of data from them, one of the big problems is that you definitely cannot service people in the smaller cities or remotest corners of the country, because then you have to have physical access or sort of a branch structure there to serve them. Second problem is, this is obviously very high cost method at the same time, because you have to send someone, they will go there, they'll meet and basically do collect all sort of things, which is again relatively high cost. And once that happens, that definitely means that you cannot give them low credit product, like low ticket credit product. The second point, when you're trying to ask people a lot of formal documentation to understand their income pattern, that becomes very problematic. Again, because in India, I think majority of the folks work in semi-organized and organized sector, where they might not be getting such extensive documentation, right? So you have to, but it does not mean that they are not earning. In fact, in India, we have 300, 400 million people who are actually working in these sectors and earning like earning comfortably. I mean, it's not that they're earning massively, but they're making good living, and they are quite aspirational. So it does not mean that they should be excluded just because they don't have a formal documentation in the format that you like. And number three, with respect to the credit histories, that is actually a chicken and egg problem if you look at it, right? So because you don't have a credit history, you don't get a loan. If you can't get a loan, you cannot build a credit history. So now you're stuck there. What do you do? And so that's why you needed a different approach to solve for each of these problems. So one of the big things that we witnessed and like we have obviously seen firsthand while growing, is that while people do not have these formal traditional means of documentation to prove themselves, they are actually quite digital savvy, tech savvy today. Pretty much every person now has a smartphone, or I think we'll be there pretty soon, right? We already are at 400, 500 million plus smartphone users who are actually using mobile internet on their phone. And so these guys are digitally connected to the rest of the world. They are quite aspirational. So they are actually, I think, accessing the same websites and services as you and me do, sitting, like 1,000 kilometers away in a small area, right? So today, I think the knowledge gap is anyway diminishing. And with that, obviously, people are also getting more and more demanding. That's a fact. So we figured that if you can create tools to create a data first company, and you can leverage this alternate data to understand them, that could be a big game changer. So for instance, rather than checking on them, going to their home or making it a precondition, today, if you again can leverage your smartphone data to understand where do they reside, right? Or what do they do, collect the data from them in, say, a vernacular setup. which is something which they are extremely comfortable with. You talk to them in their language, you ask for that information. That becomes very easy, because today you can do all of that just through their smartphone, right? You don't even need to go to their home to talk to them or understand them. You can do it from there only. Similarly, you can leverage a lot of other data sources. For instance, financial SMS data. That is something which has evolved in India in a manner like I don't think anyone else in the world does. So today, if you look at our communication, most of our personal communication has moved to WhatsApp or, like social channels like those. And our SMSs actually have become sort of the communication channel for all our business or financial related stuff. So every time you do sort of an ATM swipe or you do any transaction, you will get an SMS confirmation for that, right? Every time you do some spends or make some earning, you will get an SMS confirmation. If you go to a shop and pay him through UPI handle, the shopkeeper will get an SMS confirmation for that. So now, if you can create a system, which obviously the consent based architecture, make sure that you are able to leverage this data and understand, okay, how do their cash flow profiles look like, without asking them for a formal IT return or a pay slip. You can still recreate what sort of financial performance do they have.
Absolutely.
And you can actually use it to determine what should be the right products for them. Similarly, when it comes to understanding their willingness to repay, bureau is obviously chicken and egg, but you can look at a lot of other things. I mean, leave it, right? I mean, even if you were to take a step back and like I introduce you to two people in general, just by talking to them for 10 minutes, I think a lot of times we can make those judgments, right? Which is a guy who is more aspirational, who wants to achieve something in life and, just needs your help to give him that push, right? By the way they behave, by the way they spend their time, by the way they interact. So, for example, if you meet two guys and there is one guy who is actually trying to learn a lot, educate himself, trying out, say, different sort of apps to increase his business, while there's another guy who is mostly spending his time, on the social media app or TikTok sort of apps, you actually realize that the first guy is more aspirational. Similarly, when you look at their cash flow pattern, that also obviously provides a lot of evidence, what they are doing. So I think once you're able to understand these like these patterns, that gives you a lot of solid insight into how much credit and, like in what way should be given to them. And that is something we have been able to leverage through our, as I said, I think alternate database machine learning approach. Because this data actually is not humanly possible to analyze. Because there are a lot of micro signals. They are not thick signals. The good thing with bureau or income statements are they're thick signal. अगर आपको पता है कि there's this guy who's earning this much, मान लीजिए 50,000 100,000 rupees a month, and वो उसका private sector job है which is stable in nature, and he has a bureau of 800. Definitely this is a thick signal. So most likely if you give it credit to that guy, you are going to be right rather than wrong. But with the form of data that I'm talking about, a lot of that actually becomes not so thick. So definitely you have to use technology in a deeper way, in a more nuanced way, to understand how much it will work, आपको model कैसे बनाने हैं, what should you deploy over there. So that is something where we spent a lot of our time. And that's where I think the pedigree of the team also helped. Like all four of us at the founder level were, like all of us are graduates, computer science graduates from different IITs. We bring almost 40 years of experience among us even before we started the company. So that helped us to, I think, approach the problem in a very scientific and patient manner. And then I think over time we were lucky to be joined by a very mission-driven folks at senior level, middle level, junior level, like across the levels. Now we have a team which is 200 members strong, and that has really helped us to achieve our goal so far. So yeah, I think the key thing though is that you have to approach this in a very patient manner, like because it's not something where you throw capital and you will get the result tomorrow. Because credit models actually need time. They have to see the vintage, they have to see the seasoning. कुछ credit model जो आज perform कर रहे हैं, they will not perform tomorrow because the markets have suddenly reversed. So you have to create something which actually holds to over a much larger period of time and can sustain different market cycles. So yeah, I think that focus is very important.
It's really interesting the way you have used the data and predicted the credit behavior of the customers. Now I have a question around the other part of the entire journey, which is recovery of credit, or how to make sure people pay back that loan. Can you help us understand what is the mechanism in place, and how do you deal with situations where people don't pay back? Because India is a country where people are pretty comfortable in making some jugaad rather than doing the right thing. So tell us about it.
Right. So see, so you need to provide for a few things. One, I think you need to make it very easy and seamless for your customer to, make the repayment or the collection, right? So for that, again, we have used technology at multiple touch points. Like today, our customers can repay us in any manner they find it comfortable. So if they want, they can repay us through UPI apps, whatever they are comfortable using. They can pay us through their bank account. They can pay us through their debit card, like whatever mechanism it works for them. So we support all of that. At the same time, we make sure that our app experience is very simple and very intuitive for them, because that becomes very important when you're trying to focus on the vast underserved markets of India, right? Not all of them are homogeneous in terms of their understanding or like education level. So you need to make sure that you have a very customer friendly, easy and intuitive user experience for them to go through and make sure they do not face any hiccups when they're trying to navigate the app, or I think understand how to make the repayment. Now, obviously, on the jugaad part, so what we do here is, in fact, that is something we have also come to believe, that majority of the folks predominantly are quite aspirational in India, and like are finding the right ways to rise in their life. The problem is, though, that there is always small chunk, which is very small, but the issue is if you do not take care of it, then the larger good chunk also pays a price for that. Because of this smaller segment of people, a lot of, I think genuine folks are also labeled as relatively unservable, right? Which is not right. And that's where the power of technology comes in. So because of the usage of data that we do, that allows us to weed a lot of, these fraudulent players at very early stages itself. And once you're able to do that, then you know that whoever has come to the funnel, they are really genuine folks who are, trying to find the right options for themselves, and then you can serve them very comfortably. So in fact, when we begin, like that is one of the key things that we had set for ourselves. That, like, we believe that credit or financial services in general should be democratized. Everyone who is a genuine person should get access to the right product. So it does not necessarily have to be a large product. It can be commensurate with what their income level or their capacity is, but he should have access to something. However, in order for us to reach to this goal, it becomes very, very different that you have a very strong fraud protection mechanism, right? And we saw a lot of very interesting incidents of it. There were some folks who actually, like, when they hear, okay, that there is a mobile app which gives you money without meeting you, without coming to your home, or without sort of checking, that's what they believe. So obviously they will actually create hundreds of profiles. Like, we have had one individual who actually created 70 different profiles, and he tried every permutation combination you can imagine, right? So he initially came in a specific manner. He tried to take a loan from us. Then he actually, on the same phone, tried to install a different SIM to take a loan from us. Then he tried to go to a different device. Then he tried to, get documents from his friend or, someone in his town, and then use their Aadhaar or PAN documents to get a loan. So people have tried to do all sort of things. But when you create a very strong system and then people realize they cannot break in, then it becomes obviously very, very difficult. So I think those are the kind of things that we have tried to do. Like, we have tried to be really supportive for customer, and we've created a system where a lot of underwriting and data-driven mechanisms weed out these players at the early stage itself. Once you're able to do that, then it is not really a big problem. Then I think commensurate with their business model, you can always keep room for some lapses, which are not necessarily intention-based. A lot of times, because, as I said, these people are typically much more prone to shocks as well. Like, for instance, when pandemic hit hard, this is one of the segment which was really hit, because of because their shops were closed, or businesses were shut down, or they lost a job, right? But that's very circumstantial. And if you support them, we actually created a lot of things around, a lot of facilities around that period to make sure that people are able to sustain. Once you do that, I think people really also believe in you, they trust you, and they find a way to pay you back, I think, when they get a chance. But yeah, I think so far this has really served us well.
Okay. Coming to the last part, we are almost out of time. I'll just ask two more questions to you. One is, what is the meaning of entrepreneurship to you? How would you define the term entrepreneur?
Right. So, see, I think entrepreneurship for me encompasses a couple of things. One, I think it gives you the freedom to basically pursue something which is not possible in a traditional setup. Either because there are constraints or because people do not see the business sense. Like I remember when we were beginning, I talked to a lot of senior bankers, and most of these guys had their own maid or driver story, where they gave, some amount of money to their maid or their driver, and then they ran away, and they could never recover it. And they were like, when I could not get money from a person I knew and who had worked for me for years, you are telling me you are going to give loan to someone who is 1,000 kilometers away, and still they'll pay back because you have some algorithms or machine learning to take care of it. So it was very, very difficult, but we really believed in this, and then that's why I wanted to pursue it. And I think entrepreneurship gives you that freedom, I think, to do that. So that is one. Secondly, I believe, if you can actually innovate or take a different approach to solve a problem which has been there, but relatively, again, because people do not appreciate how the new technologies can, meaningfully change the course of things, because they are unknown, or no one has proven it yet. So it's always difficult to take a complete bet on that. If you are not, if you're trying to do that in the corporate ambit, right? So people who are entrepreneurs, they believe in them. They obviously have to take a leap of faith at some point. But I think once you're able to look at that from the right perspective, or if you believe there is a potential to disrupt the space with this approach, then they go for it. So I think for me, entrepreneurship is a combination of freedom as well as the potential to disrupt, their sectors in a way that is not possible in the traditional setup.
Okay. Final question. Tell us, what are the different learnings that you have got as an entrepreneur, which we can take away and apply to our ventures?
Right. So see, the most important thing that I'll see is that you need to really persevere. Like when people typically start, a lot of times you think, yeah, okay, I have a plan. I'll do this, फिर मैं ये करूँगा, and like this is how things will grow, and we will get there. Typically, that's not the exact trajectory which happens. There are always certain things happening, right? If you're growing fast, there are problems which are associated with growth, and if you're not growing, then obviously problems associated with not growing, right? So you need to, but constantly deal with such problems. And I think that is one thing which you should be ready for. I think because it's always a game for the long term. I don't think it's a very, or you should not get into it thinking, yeah, I'm going in there for 2 years, 3 years, I'll make money and I'll get out, right? So one, I think you should be really committed to the problem. You should be ready to persevere, and I think once you do that, things happen. You get, I think, a lot of people who will support you and help you, from even unknown quarters. So all those things happen, but you need to believe, and like you need to really get committed to it. So I think that's the biggest thing. Apart from that, obviously, now I think it's a great time if one wants to be an entrepreneur. So things have always, like, at least I would believe over the last decade, have consistently gone in the upward direction. But that opportunity is, I think, just phenomenally expanding now. Like this business which we started 5 years back, I think we could not have done it 7 years back because the ecosystem was not aligned, for us to create a complete digital business to tap into this opportunity. And today, I think I believe we are sitting at an inflection point, because now over the next, I think, 5 to 10 years, you will see a lot more business models evolving because of, I think, the changes that are going in right now. So if one wants to be an entrepreneur, I will definitely advise, I think, we are in a very amazing time. However, I think don't be misled. make sure that you're really committed to it, and you are coming in for the long haul. So yeah.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure to have you here at ELI. Thanks for your time, Rohit, and our best wishes for SmartCoin.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting us. Great chatting with you.
Thank you, Rohit. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.